and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Higgins.
Great to be back with you on The Simple Truth. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of Saint Joseph. Today is Testimony Tuesday, where we bring you real, live, first-hand testimonial accounts of the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. Our guest today is Michael Kenney. He is a Catholic husband, father, president of Pro-Life Partners Foundation, prolifepartnersfoundation.org. Michael has written and spoken on behalf of preborn children and their mothers for more than 40 years. He practiced law for 13 years before serving in various cabinet-level roles in Catholic education for nearly 25 years. Michael is also the co-author of In God We Trust, Morally Responsible Investing. He holds undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Notre Dame and a Master's of Law from George Washington University. He and his wife, Mary Claire, have been married for 37 years and have 7 children. Michael Kenney, great blessing to have you with us today. Thank you for being here. How are you?
I am so well, and it's my blessing, Jim. I have long admired your show, and I can't wait to have this conversation.
Yes, yeah. Well, thank you again for being here. And we always begin at the beginning on Testimony Tuesday. So let's start with childhood. What was your early life like, your family, the culture that you grew up in?
I won the lottery. I was born into an Irish Catholic family, faithful parents, and I'm the middle child of 6 children. We were known as the 4 boys for the first several years of my life, and then we had the additional blessing of what are known as Irish twins. My youngest brother and only sister are 11 months apart, and so one of the reasons I'm so pro-life is I was a junior high person when these 2 angels arrived, and to be able to care for them was a tremendous blessing for me.
Wow. And so I would imagine then Irish Catholic family would have been baptized as an infant, and then First Holy Communion probably around 2nd grade or so, confirmation. So we like to try to follow the sacramental graces. So maybe speak to the sense of parish life, how your family was plugging into that, anything that you remember regarding that.
Thank you, Jim. I love stories, and I could use your whole broadcast in response to this particular question, because for whatever reason, my mind, when I'm asked those kinds of questions, immediately is transformed back to moments. And I, recall even the angle of the lighting and so forth. So I had the tremendous privilege of being educated in Catholic schools from kindergarten all the way through law school. And I can never be grateful enough for that experience. And so when I began in kindergarten, the reason I began at a Catholic school was my birthday is 2 days after Christmas. And there was this thought, well, if you start as a 4-year-old in kindergarten, you may not make it. And so we can always send them to the kind of the traditional route at that time was to go to the public school for grade school and then the Catholic school. So I have very vivid memories of kindergarten, and I was very suspicious of a beautiful Notre Dame nun. At that time, Jim, you could only see a portion of the sister's face. It was very much like Sound of Music, and in a very beautiful way. And for whatever reason, I was very suspicious that somehow this dedicated nun had some sort of agenda in mind about how she was teaching our class. So we had a number of little run-ins that were just a matter of will bumping up against will. And so I think it was a very close call as to whether or not she would endorse my advancement to 1st grade. And my dad, after she passed away, after I had graduated from school, that is law school, sent me her obituary. And it turns out that Sister Mary Samuel rose to the level of vice president of the Kindergarten National Association. So you're literally talking about one of the finest kindergarten teachers in the nation. And so that's how it all began. And then I have vivid memories of First Communion. I remember thinking that I'm not worthy of this, not only the beautiful sacrament, but particularly the family reception afterwards. It was that magnificent. I had another cousin who was in my class, and so it was a joint extended celebration, and it was phenomenal. We made confirmation at a young age at that time, and so I believe we were in fourth grade, and but it was very vivid memories of the bishop coming. It was an evening sacrament, and the church was packed. And then, from there, just I never had any sort of time during my life where I was questioning the faith to the point of drifting. I don't know if that says something about my intellectual formation not being as inquisitive as it should be, or just a great blessing. But I did kind of go through the Vatican II time period, and of course, a lot of confusion, but none of that seemed to distract me. So I consider it a great blessing. My guardian angel must be working overtime, and I just the life issue occurred when I was a freshman in high school. The Roe decision came out, and at that point, I just was completely convicted by this is so antithetical to who we are as a nation and to my own experience caring for my youngest brother and sister, that this will be something I need to fight against my whole life. And so that's what drew me into the life issue.
Yeah, Michael Kenney with us. And again, he is president of Pro-Life Partners Foundation, prolifepartnersfoundation.org. Michael, what do you recall from that time? So freshman year, January 22nd, 1973, Roe v. Wade, Doe v. Bolton, all that comes down. What surrounding that do you recall in terms of the culture? Was it real big news? Was it something that people were rising up against immediately? What do you remember in terms of the reaction of the time?
That's a great question, Jim, and I'm privileged to have lived at that time. I would say that as I was going through the grade school years and traveling on a school bus, I happened to go past the University of Toledo, where I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, a wonderful community. But in the 1960s, literally the age of Aquarius is unfolding on all these college campuses. If you've ever looked at footage, just hedonism, sort of boosted by excessive use of alcohol and who knows what. And so I remember as a grade school student looking out the bus window saying, what will happen to our country when these people are in charge? I mean, I don't know. I don't consider myself to, have any great capacity to do that. I would say that was kind of an inspiration that just occurred, But so by the time 1973 occurs, we have been going through a whole sequence of very traumatic episodes. In 68, Martin Luther King is assassinated, Robert Kennedy assassinated, and then the whole Woodstock thing happens in 69. And, as a kid, you're reading the papers and you're following this. And so when it got to be January 22nd, 1973, it is very vivid in my mind because I happened to be at an extended Christmas party. We had a great uncle who probably was coming from Nixon's inaugural ball at the White House. He was of that capacity, but he never had children. And so he considered his own nieces and then the grandnieces and nephews, of which I was one, to be his family. So he would have a late Christmas party. It happened to be on Monday, January 22nd, 1973. I happened to be in the hallway when he came off the elevator at like 6:35 and said that Walter Cronkite has just announced that the United States Supreme Court has legalized abortion. And I personally was totally devastated. I thought, this is the end of our country. And it is now, looking back in history, they say it may have been the busiest news day in the whole 20th century because Lyndon Johnson passed away that day. Watergate was starting to get a little bit of news. The inauguration had just happened, and then Roe versus Wade. So I don't know exactly how to answer your question in terms of whether or not but it was breaking news. Like Walter Cronkite had a plan to focus on the energy crisis and stepped away from that plan to announce this news. And the Catholic Church did a great job, putting out statements right away. And but it was just chaotic. I would a horrible thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that always impresses me from that time, where there's evidence of how strong the Catholic Church was pushing back against it. The 1975 plan that the bishops put out, the pro-life activities plan, and it's robust. There's a lot in there, including figuring out how to get to a human life amendment, how to even do political lobbying and break things up by district and find good candidates. And if those good candidates don't exist, well, then we're going to get our own candidates and put them up there. I mean, the plan is outstanding. The sad reality, though, is that it never seemed to get off the ground. It wasn't really executed. Now the plan has been subsequently sort of watered down throughout the years and still not being executed, even for what's in the text today. So, there's a lot to look at there, but just incredible to hear about you being a freshman in high school at that time, your experience of that time. When we get back, we're going to hear more from Michael Kenney as he continued to progress and how his life intertwined with all of this going on in the world. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Heaven is our home. That's the theme of our 2023 Fall Appeal, currently underway. Hi, this is Jim Wright, president of the Station of the Cross. I love the theme of this appeal because it summarizes our mission. Yes, we want to make the world a better place, and we want to fight the evil that surrounds us. But all of our efforts are ultimately about helping people reach heaven. The most gratifying part of our work is the feedback from the listeners who have returned to the Catholic faith and started to receive the sacraments again. And it's all made possible by you. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for your past support and graciously ask for your continued support. Please call 1-877-711-8500 or visit thestationofthecross.com. Use the donation page from your iCatholic Radio mobile app or return the envelope from one of our recent mailings. Your generous donation will help others to reach their heavenly home, a priceless treasure that will last for all eternity. Thank you, and may God bless you and your family.
Hello, this is Steve Gleason with your 1-minute tool for Catholic evangelism. Here's the question for your non-Catholic friend. Who are the 10 most well-known preachers in America? Well, here's your 3 best friendship tools for Catholic evangelism. Here's the list. Copeland, Osteen, Benny Hinn, Joyce Myers, T.D. Jakes, Stephen Furtick, Andy Stanley, Robert Jeffers, Rick Warren, Alistair Begg, John MacArthur. Well, secondly, all these pastors say the same thing on Sunday morning, which is turn with me in your Bible. Well, then how's the harmony regarding, say, eternal security? Disagreement. Present-day ministry of the Holy Spirit? Disagreement. Relationship of baptism to salvation? Disagreement. Church government? Disagreement. Life beginning at conception until natural death? Disagreement. And eschatology? Disagreement. So what's going on here? Well, if you are someone who says, all I need is the Word of God, brother, because the Bible is going to give me everything I need to live out the Jesus life, okay, hope you've already ditched your favorite blogger, your favorite preacher, your favorite podcaster, and most of all, your religious Google searches. Well, speaking of Google searches, I do request one last Google search for you. Magisterium.
The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Testimony Tuesday. Our guest today, Michael Kenney. He is president of Pro-Life Partners Foundation, prolifepartnersfoundation.org. In the first segment, we heard a bit about his Irish Catholic family, his upbringing, solid parish life, solid catechesis, very, very blessed. And as a freshman in high school, then Roe v. Wade takes place, and then, Michael, you shared that in fourth grade is when you had received the sacrament of confirmation. Well, you needed it at that point. We needed some soldiers of Christ once we had the world really having this assault by the enemy upon the culture, upon our nation. And so what was that like then as you went through your high school years, kind of discerning, what's God calling you to do? Where's God calling you to go after your high school years? Did Roe v. Wade play a role in that thinking, that discernment? What can you share with us?
Yeah, sure. I I was a middle child, and therefore stereotypical middle children tend to be more observers and a little quieter. But I did feel kind of a call to become at least active in the Catholic high school. It was an all boys Catholic high school, so I served as the president of the freshman class, sophomore class, student body. And when I graduated, and our senior year was the bicentennial year, so part of my thinking was, let's really celebrate the founding principles of the United States to highlight those. I like to think that we ultimately have the opportunity to course correct because we have those founding principles. So we had the entire front of the school was transformed, all the windows transformed into this huge flag of the United States of America. I did what I could to sort of pay attention to the issue, try to learn, try to understand it. I had fantastic theology classes in high school, and then I had the privilege of heading off to Notre Dame, and I was able to take some outstanding faculty there. I have a very vivid memory of when John Paul II was named the Pope. I was a sophomore in college, and I had a dream the night before about something having to do with the Pope, and I wrote a paper about it because I had been so enthused about JP1, which it's easy for a lot of us to forget that John Paul I really captured the world's imagination because he spoke about his favorite author was Mark Twain, a favorite American author, and just was a very relatable, holy man. And so when he passed away in 30 days, it was kind of unclear as to where the whole world was going to go. And then when John Paul II came in, it just took the whole pro-life movement and articulated the principles of the gospel of life for the next nearly 25 years in a way that equips all of us to be, effective in this space. And then Benedict XVI, I think, just added on to that in a way that really resonates with me. So I appreciate your question. I'm sorry I can't give you a more precise answer than that, but I can definitely say as evil as abortion and how it was ramping up, I was also very encouraged that there were these other efforts that were countering it, and of which I could tell you dozens of those. Mm-hmm. And we're part of the continuation of that great legacy.
Yes, yeah, incredible. And very interesting to hear about the history and your experience of it. And getting back to the personal faith component here, at the same time as this is going on, so you're in college, you've got multiple conclaves taking place, and ultimately Pope John Paul II then emerging, and all of this taking place. Was there a sense that with the advance of evil that you had watched rise from your grade school years, that you remember this sort of sexual revolution rise up, culminating then in abortion? So you've seen all this. So was there a sense that I've got to go deeper into this life of God? I have to. I need more grace. We need more graces to be able to really push back against this and really advance the culture of life and the civilization of love, as we are called to really effectively fight back. Yeah, I've got to do some good work, but I've also got to dive deeper in the faith. We need more grace. Was there a sense of that? Do you remember anything like that?
Yeah, so for me, the Blessed Mother has been so consoling for me. And so I ran cross country in high school, and I would always run with a rosary as a high school person and say the rosary, and we were very serious about cross country. So we would run, on average, probably 12 miles a day. And therefore there was a lot of solitary journeying, sort of training, and it kind of gives me chills to think about how beautiful that experience was. So it was so overwhelming, the ramping up of evil, that I went very simple and went to the rosary and to the Blessed Mother, because I couldn't figure it out as John Paul II was able to do. I think back about when he came in and he used all of his Wednesday audiences for about the first 4 years to articulate the theology of the body. I thought that is definitely the Holy Spirit working through him, because that's exactly what we need, But I was very simple. I was like very grateful for the Mass and grateful for the Rosary confession, and then I thought I need to equip myself with knowing how to deconstruct what I knew to be false legal arguments, at a gut level. And then through that time period, of course, ideally you have parents and mentors who are helping you identify your strengths. And I was able to identify a strength for writing and for sort of understanding how to connect ideas and maybe even create things. And so that's what I thought. I've really got to hone that skill and then put it to use at some point. So that was my academic focus.
Yeah, excellent. Michael Kenney is with us, ProLifePartnersFoundation.org. Yeah, it's interesting how in the Gospel of Matthew 25, we know that passage, the judgment of nations. Jesus talks about whatever you do to the least of these, you do it unto me. And then not long before that, really right about before that, we get that teaching of Jesus, that parable on the talents, right? And I think that those go together, right? So that's interesting. You're discerning your talents, figuring out, okay, what am I called to do in this time? And then your college career progresses. Tell us more about that. Also, let us know also when you met your wife and the discernment for marriage and all of that, if you can add that in.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jim. So, one of the beautiful parts about my experience at Notre Dame is that they had, and they still do today, Mass in every dormitory. And so one of the strengths of Notre Dame has always been single-sex dorms, which allows for a certain camaraderie, and then having Mass and a chapel and the Blessed Sacrament in every residence hall. So that was very important to me. I was also thinking that possibly I'm called to the priesthood. And so during my college years, I was praying about that and pondering it. And even right into law school, I was praying and pondering that. And regrettably, I had encountered in the early 1980s a visiting priest that was assigned who was very visibly demonstrating a homosexual lifestyle, in the sense that all of the sort of stereotypical signals of that. And I asked him at one point when I saw him, because he was in the graduate dorm that I was in, I said, how did you get here? Without confronting him on the underlying issue. And he stared at me, Jim, with I would have to say, unfortunately, a sinister spirit, and said, "My bishop sent me." And that's when I thought, oh my gosh, there's something profoundly wrong in our formation of priests and even bishop. And so it was a turning point for me, where I thought, I talked to a good friend who happened to be from Buffalo, by the way, and he said, I think you're really called to be a father. And it was at that point that that resonated with me. And so there's more that could be said about all that, but basically that kind of helped clarify, well, okay, I guess I should focus on my academic work. And then I graduated from law school and arrived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which I was attracted to in part because it's a conservative family, pro-life town. Pro-life Michigan, Right to Life is headquartered there. And I decided not to go to Chicago, but to go to this sort of a community I'd never even heard of. But I thought there may be a better opportunity to meet the kind of person that I could possibly be married to there. And so there's a nice story about how it is I met my wife in that context. But I feel totally blessed. And who am I? I just think that I'm an example of it. When you pray, God is answering. And if we're attentive, there's little promptings, and you sort of pursue. And God has our best interests in mind, even through the sufferings.
Yeah, well, hey, we're in a time where so much has been lost, including a sense of young men, young women understanding how to even find their spouses, how to how to really build themselves up into the virtues to be the kind of spouses that they would like to find.
Right.
So let's take a couple minutes. We've got a couple minutes before the break. Can you share a little bit about that story of how you met your wife?
Yeah, sure. Well, so I started the first summer when you take the bar exam is sort of a lost summer. You're working, but then you're going to classes at night, and the bar exam takes place near the end of summer. And I was in the evening study sessions, and all the young lawyers preparing for the bar there, jammed classroom. And I look out the window and I see a guy who looks much like you, Jim, very fit, poised, and he walks out into the parking lot. I'm on the third floor of an old public high school, and looking down, he gets into a convertible, drives away. I thought, who is that guy? And I wonder if he has a sister. And then the next summer, I reconnected with him, and it turns out faithful Catholic guy, confident guy, and he later introduces me to his sister. And the rest is we were married within like 4 months.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. So this sense of, hey, if you see, if you can find a man that seems like he's on a virtuous path, maybe that's maybe that's a sign, right? And I would say the same too.
Yeah.
This thought is a pretty good one. I think it's crossed my mind many times before, which is also, I think, even better, which is, maybe a virtuous brother, but what about a virtuous father? So get to know kind of the men in the community, right? And from there, that might lead in a good direction as well. But also, I just want to say to young people, diving in to the work that is needed in our time, especially in the pro-life area. We've got this ongoing daily mass murder of our littlest brothers and sisters, exploitation of pregnant moms in need. We have a responsibility, right? We want to use our talents to respond rightly in authentic love in this time. If you do that, you're going to meet some great people along the way, and you're going to put yourself in a position, I think, to really be somewhere where you're probably going to be around, folks that are going to lead to be able to discern a good and holy marriage. So something to keep in mind. But when we get back, more with Michael Kenney, ProLifePartnersFoundation.org. Stay tuned.
Seasons change, and radio programming changes too. In an effort to offer you the best in Catholic radio, we're happy to announce our new radio lineup starting Monday, August 28th. Weekdays at 10 a.m., we'll bring you classic episodes of Mother Angelica. This allows Mother Miriam to fulfill her religious obligations and be with you more regularly now at 2 p.m. Weekday evenings at 6, we have an exciting new program entitled Ask a Priest Live, followed by Catholic Answers Live at 7 and Jesus 911 at 8, with the exception of Thursdays where The World Over with Raymond Arroyo remains in its 8 p.m. slot. That's Mother Angelica Classics at 10, Mother Miriam Live at 2, Ask a Priest Live at 6, Catholic Answers Live at 7, and Jesus 911 at 8, starting Monday, August 28th.
This is Jesuit Father Robert McTagg, your daily host of the Catholic Current. Join me on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for a doubleheader. We'll start with Dr. Paul Thigpen to talk about how not to miss out on the apocalypse. Then we'll meet a new colleague, Jordan Pacheco, host of the exciting new show on the Station of the Cross Media Network, Ask a Priest Live. Don't miss out and join us on the Catholic Current on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, coming to you from the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
The Station of the Cross is listener-funded, and we value your ongoing generosity. In this fast-paced world, it's easy to let your recurring donation slip due to something like a new address or a card number change. If you suspect that we might not have your up-to-date donor information, you can check with us during regular business hours at 1-877-888-6279 extension 104 or anytime online at thestationofthecross.com.
Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Our guest today, Michael Kenney, sharing some of his personal testimony. He is president of Pro-Life Partners Foundation, prolifepartnersfoundation.org. All right, there's lots of different directions we could go from this point. We're at about halftime here, Michael, but I want to ask you to kind of go whatever direction you want to go. I mean, you've done so much. Your resume is prolific. I know you still got a ton of good left to do, but where would you like to go from here?
Well, I would first like to give recognition to what I would consider to be our nation's greatest pro-life law professor, Charles Rice. May he rest in peace. He passed away a few years ago. But if your audience is not familiar, I would urge you to consider looking up on the internet Professor Charles Rice and any of the many books that he's written or articles on the life issue, because to the extent that I'm able to articulate well the pro-life cause, it would be through his masterful teaching and then mentorship over the next nearly 35 years before he passed away. So I think it's very important to acknowledge those who have equipped us. And I was not planning on going to law school. I was planning on working at a Catholic university as an English professor and having a sort of calm life. But I saw he gave a talk on campus, and I was invited to go to the law school. I thought, well, maybe I'm being invited to go to the law school to learn how to deconstruct the Roe versus Wade decision, because surely it cannot withstand scrutiny. And so the last assignment that I had, last paper at Notre Dame's law school, I dedicated to the life issue and really poured the research skills that I had acquired at that point and did the best I could. I wrote a paper called On Behalf of Life. It happened to be the 10th anniversary of Roe, and I made the case for the 5th and 14th Amendment applying to the preborn human being. And who am I at that time? A law student just trying to figure it out as well as you can. But because of the guidance of Professor Charles Rice, I was able to articulate that in a way that is quite compelling because it's true. It's as the name of your program, The Simple Truth. And it was in that research that I encountered for the first time Dr. Bernard Nathanson. He had just written a book called Aborting America. And I was just so struck by how in that book, Dr. Nathanson revealed that from the very beginning, this whole abortion regime is based on lies. And he articulated that in great detail, and he articulated how the abortion game plan was to make the Catholic Church, particularly the all-male hierarchy, the enemy, and to develop a whole campaign around that. And then, Jim, I had two other touch points with Dr. Nathanson that were quite startling that I could go into if that's helpful, but I also want to give you a chance to ask questions.
Sure. No, wherever you want to go. So yeah, if you want to go there, go for it.
Well, and I say these stories because I believe we need to think as Lincoln thought, which was Lincoln came to the clear understanding that providence is at work all the time in the human experience. And Lincoln, 9 different times as president of the United States during the 4 years he was president, he called upon our nation to repent, to pray, to fast, and to give thanksgiving, because he was drawing upon providence, begging providence to relieve us of the great sin of slavery. The sin of abortion is the same legal issue in terms of depriving a section of the human society of rights that only God can give and take away. And so my encounters with Dr. Nathanson that occurred subsequently is that as I was practicing law, about 7 years into the practice of law, I was assigned a case that involved representing a family whose son suffered severe and permanent injury during the birthing process. The obstetrician made most of his money by being an abortionist in my hometown of Toledo, Ohio. And I was asked to go to New York City to be there when our expert witness would testify in deposition. And I said, well, who's the expert witness? And they said, Dr. Bernard Nathanson. And I thought, wow, what an experience to be able to meet this person. So I traveled to New York City, and Jim, I have never met a more distraught, arrogant, frustrated, angry human being in my entire life that I met that day in the late 1980s in Dr. Nathanson. He had become pro-life, but he was an atheist, and he made it very clear that his pro-life position had nothing to do with anything other than science. He was not interested in God or talking about God or making that connection. And it was just a very, very dark spirit and a very dark office. And then he did a devastatingly excellent job demonstrating the malpractice of the defendant doctor. Now, fast forward 7 years later, and our family is grown. And I said to my wife, Mary Claire, I know we're very busy, but there's a speaker coming to the annual Michigan Right to Life banquet. This speaker has just written a book, The Hand of God, and it's Dr. Bernard Nathanson. Could we possibly go? And to her credit, we somehow were able to go and leave our large family in the care of somebody. And Jim, meeting Dr. Nathanson at this point, I've never seen a more dramatic transformation. He was docile, he was humble, he was authentic, he was generous, and he was relieved of this terrible burden that he had experienced. I don't know how exorcisms work, but it was as if he had been exorcised of a spirit that was no longer who he was, and totally liberated from that. And so I say those sorts of stories just to try to help us realize that there's a big picture going on here, and we've got to be willing to be available to God to work through us in whatever way we can.
Yeah, incredible testimony. And Bernard Nathanson, he joined the Catholic Church on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, was baptized privately by John Cardinal O'Connor in a chapel below the main altar of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City on December 9th, 1996. What a story. Thanks be to God. And Michael, I have here the letter from Professor Rice that you had sent me previously. That is just fantastic, from 2006, that he writes about this proposal to amend the Michigan Constitution. And he really lays out the case of constitutional personhood here for the preborn, concluding in the end that that this is an important step, he says, forward in the effort to restore legal protection for the right to life of all human beings. He says the time is right for such an initiative, and that was back in 2006. And he says, he goes on to say that it's an appropriate time to present the newly configured Supreme Court a clear and measured enactment such as this proposal to invite the court to address the issue. There is nothing to lose and everything to gain by offering such a straightforward presentation of the issue for the consideration of the Supreme Court. Of course, we're still trying to do that today, and we're trying to build grassroots support. We're standing on the shoulders of giants like Professor Rice, who have laid this out so clearly, so well over the years. And we're trying to get people to push forward on this and tell the Supreme Court, look, we are demanding you as American citizens, do your job. This is what the court exists for. You're arbiters of the Constitution. Just tell us, are they persons or not? And of course they are. What else would they be? So they're protected under the 14th Amendment. They've got to take up a case. And he was actually saying that this case, this Michigan Constitution amendment, could provide such a case for the court to address it. Just phenomenal stuff to read back from 2006. But any further thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, and Professor Rice always emphasized that our most important weapon is prayer, and that as a nation we need to be praying behind this. And what one of the many admirable attributes of Professor Rice was that at that point he had been making that argument for at least 35 years. And yet you can tell, Jim, just in the writing of that in reading his writing, he's not in any way sort of despondent, or he's just totally faithful. And at that point, he's in his late 70s in his life, when he wrote that letter, and he passed away about 7 years later. And yet the whole time he's confident in God and confident in, as we need to be. So, yes, there's nothing to lose by making the case. And I'm working on communication projects. I'm glad that we'll be collaborating with you on that. What you're doing tremendous work with the Men's March and articulating, and that 1-minute video you have is spot on, beautiful. Everybody needs to see it and be playing it daily. And then as our system works, each branch of the government has an obligation to uphold the Constitution. So we need to inspire the president, a pro-life president, to issue an executive order where everyone within the executive branch is protecting preborn children. We need Congress to pass legislation honoring the reality that life begins at conception. And then there will be litigation. It's on a collision course that will get to the Supreme Court, where they will be required to address that specific question. And as Lincoln said, am I a man or not? It's, am I a human being or not? And of course, as you just said, Jim, the preborn child is a human being from that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you had this handed on to you, this understanding from Professor Rice as a university law student. And so what has that been like over the past decades now, with you knowing this and having a clear understanding of this, but seeing that there really hasn't been a strong push for it to really get it before the court, make it happen? Anything that you can share from your vantage point over the years?
Yeah, so I have had that great blessing, and therefore I've consistently been articulating that as well as I could in talks that I've given or presentations. And until Roe was overturned, the opposition had always been, the court has concluded that there's a constitutional right to abortion. So whatever you're saying, we're not even listening to it because you're up against another constitutional right. But I know, and I'm sure that you know from the 73 decision, what has always given me hope is that Justice Blackmun, in his majority opinion, specifically said that we are deferring this question because he unfortunately misspoke when he said, we don't know when life begins. He had been the general counsel for Mayo Clinic before he was appointed to the bench. So he clearly understood that life begins at conception, but he deferred that issue. And therefore, but he says in the written opinion, but if at some point we decide that life begins at conception and we apply the 14th Amendment to the preborn child, the case, quote, for abortion collapses. So I've always been heartened by that. And my thought was that at some point, medical advances will make it so apparently clear, abundantly clear, that the skeptics or the deceitful ones won't even be able to be deceitful because, and so that has all happened. We have 3D images and so forth. And so I guess we just cannot be discouraged. Somehow we have to continue to advance it. And then I would say in 2017, when I hear of a young graduating law student from Harvard making the same case, Josh Craddock, I thought, okay, here we go. We're on the way. We're on our way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you must have noticed some shades of yourself in that as a young college student, legal scholar, and then Craddock putting it forward similar to what you had done in your paper years before.
Yeah, I tip my hat to Josh. Josh added another layer to it of excellence, so it's great.
Outstanding, yeah. And then that gets all rolled into George and Finnis's amicus brief to the Dobbs case that anybody can go and read. TheMen'sMarch.com. We have it up there, as well as the petition. Go sign that petition. We've got to get the Supreme Court understanding that we've got a groundswell of support calling for this. We've got to build it. Spread the word. We're going to be right back with Michael Kenney. Stay tuned.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. It remains unclear whether the U.S. Supreme Court, with no disparate rulings between U.S. appeals courts, will involve itself in the FDA chemical abortion court case. Examination of the Fifth Circuit Court ruling last week exposes reckless elimination of the system to report risks faced by women taking abortion pills. While pro-life leaders stress that abortion pills are never safe for the child, restoring safety for mothers is a first step in reprioritizing women's health over interests of the abortion industry. Abortion-friendly reporters continue to parse polling numbers to soften the impact of pro-life sentiment on the abortion industry. Yet raw numbers in a new AP poll show an aggregate of 73% of Americans opposing unlimited abortion. This is Life News Radio. In other headlines, a temporary restriction against an abortion ban has been lifted by a Louisiana appeals court. 7 guilty verdicts were rendered Friday against a UK neonatal nurse accused of professional murder. Oregon is preparing to try stopping pro-life prayer outside abortion businesses. Washington Governor Jay Inslee is being sued for providing children gender or abortion therapies hidden from parents. A Catholic bishop is taking on diabolical religious celebration of abortions in New Mexico. Doctors engaging the decades-old medical practice of hormone replacement when used to reverse chemical abortions may soon face medical discipline in Colorado. And lastly, a pro-life leader in Pennsylvania is at Life News urging moms to seek obstetric care from pro-life doctors. Maria Gallagher says it remains both very practical and important to entrust the care of preborn children to those who truly respect life in the womb. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Michael Kenney. He is a Catholic husband and father, president of Pro-Life Partners Foundation, prolifepartnersfoundation.org, also co-author of In God We Trust, Morally Responsible Investing. You can get it from Tan Books. And so final segment here. So down the stretch we come. The floor is yours, Michael, anywhere you want to go. So many possible directions. You can go deeper into anything from a life of faith or family life. Didn't talk about being a father and your children. If there's anything you want to share there, anything else from your prolific pro-life work or anything else, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jim. Well, this is a comprehensive response that we all are involved in. It begins with prayer. We have to, I believe, be consciously fortifying ourselves with an abundance of supernatural grace, because this is beyond our capacity as human beings to correct what has happened. Our nation desperately needs to heal, and regrettably, because of the reality of abortion, we have literally millions upon millions of people who have been harmed and who are hurting from abortion. I once had a nurse tell me that she oversees a wing of a facility that cares for women who are suffering from anxiety. And she said to me that in the charts of 100% of the women in that facility, you will find post-abortive. And so we have to be, I think, so aware of the degree of harm that has spread across our country. And then I think that one of the blessings of having been involved in Catholic education is that we have to be very attentive to advancing and supporting authentic Catholic education. And the Cardinal Newman Society does a fantastic job providing guidelines and curriculum, and that's a tremendous resource. And I think because of the day and age that we are living in, human anthropology is the focal point of any Catholic school. And it begins with a recognition that we are temples of the Holy Spirit. We are made in the image and likeness of God. And therefore, all of our curriculum must be done in a pursuit of truth and a pursuit of integrity. and in pursuit of virtue. And so one of the projects I was involved, I have had the benefit of being involved in some film projects, and one of them was taking and creating curriculum around what's called the dating project, because as you said earlier, Jim, our culture unfortunately has lost an appreciation for the beauty of courtship and dating and the boundaries and really the great adventure of dating done honorably. And so I was part of a team that was selected to write the curriculum for the young adults, that would be people out of college, that can implement the dating project. And this is made available free of charge, as I understand it, through, I think, Family Theater Productions. There's a website you can go to. Any parish can download this and can conduct, it's about maybe an 8-week program where the young people get together. And I think that the curriculum is really terrific. It's a great way to meet people and icebreakers and interesting, fun things to do, and through it address the real challenges that are assaulting our culture and assaulting the dating culture, and done in a very Catholic and mature way. I also had the privilege of being involved in creating the film Unplanned, and my hope for that film was, and continues to be, that the reality of abortion would be made apparent, and particularly chemical abortion, which I'm told that by Christmas this year, something on the order of 75% abortions will be done through chemical abortions in people's homes. And in the movie Unplanned, the scene demonstrating the reality of chemical abortion is so well acted that in a normal world, that actress would have won Best Actress for her performance. And then I think we need to, advance really inspirational stories. Another project I had the privilege of having a very small role in is the story of Father Patrick Peyton. And he is the priest that coined the expression, the family that prays together stays together. And it is the most astonishingly beautiful documentary in that category that I have ever seen. It is a breakthrough innovation using his voice as the narrator and historic footage and also contemporary stories. Our family watches that documentary several times a year, and every time we watch it, we come away inspired and fortified. And so just a great thing. So I think it's all hands on deck in terms of trying to fortify marriage, the family, what you're doing, Jim, with the Men's March. When I read about your first march, I was so excited, and I hope to be a part of it this year. And we're on the winning side, as Professor Rice, he has a book called On the Winning Side. We're on the winning side, and we have got to be humble and docile to the Holy Spirit as to how to use our talents to contribute to that, and to be, I think, persistent in our faith. One last thing I'll say is Father Patrick Peyton is a great inspiration to me on many levels, but at one time he had conducted rosary rallies all over the world and was the most seen human being on the planet before John Paul II. And yet, after all this tremendous work, the 1960s happened, and you could say everything that he had accomplished in building up the family was torn apart, but he never lost faith. And his last main rally, I was a young lawyer following this development in the early 1980s. The Philippines were going through a political change that could have ended in a horrible civil war. And Father Patrick Peyton and the Rosary Rally there is attributed for essentially saving the Philippines. So just before he died, he allowed God to use him once again to do an amazing rescue mission. So that's where we are. We're on this rescue mission for our culture, for our families, for the preborn, and to heal the mothers and fathers who have gone through the horror of abortion.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very well said. Michael Kenney is with us, president of Pro-Life Partners Foundation, prolifepartnersfoundation.org. And by the way, folks, if you want to get that, check out that curriculum and that movie, The Dating Project that Michael was talking about, thedatingprojectmovie.com, thedatingprojectmovie.com. All right, just a couple minutes to go, Michael. Any final words you want to leave us with?
Well, I really want to encourage your listeners to consider the many opportunities that are provided through the Stations of the Cross radio station. I think if our Catholic community around the nation would rise up and participate in opportunities such as the Men's March, that this abortion controversy would end within a short period of time. Our communities would heal. Our marriages would be strengthened, and our the pursuit of happiness is ultimately the pursuit of living a virtuous life, and there would be an outpouring of happiness. I guess the sad other reality is that the most diabolical force, I suppose, that has been introduced into our culture is the attack on the family, and we've got to push back. We've got to fortify the family.
Mm-hmm. Yes, what a blessing it's been to have Michael Kenney with us, ProLifePartnersFoundation.org. We need many more like Michael. It's great to have a witness to faithful, virtuous family life and public life, and we got to hear about some of that today in Michael's personal testimony and his story. But yeah, very, very impressive, all of your work and just the man that you are, Michael. Thank you for being with us today.
It's my honor, Jen. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And if anybody has any questions, comments for me, anything you want to remark on the show today, feel free to reach out, Jim H. at thestationofthecross.com. God bless you.
My name is Nathan Wigfield, Executive Director of the St.